Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to The Boring Company. Back with another episode today. It's a good episode, got some good news. Good news, it appears The Boring Company is listening to my advice, or at least looking at the data, which points you in the obvious direction. And what is that direction, you might ask? Well, there's been a bit of a redesign. There have been some changes in the contract price. It has gone up. I don't think it is in regards to this change, but maybe the overall contract budget was getting out of control and they decided to do a bit of an evolution of the design, a bit of a tinker with it, and they have come to the conclusion underground stations are not the way forward. Where possible, we should try not to use underground stations. Obviously, there are certain areas where maybe it is best to use underground stations, like stadiums, big shopping malls, maybe in the middle of a large city centre, but everywhere else it's not required. If you have land available, and land is available at a relatively affordable price, we should be going for above ground stations. Now, the Boring Company has concluded that underground stations are not cost effective. In fact, they are very, very expensive. Why are they expensive? Well, essentially, you're undertaking a massive civil engineering works. You're having to excavate underground in stages. You're installing possibly hundreds of secant piles, ring beams, steel props, all sorts of works that require major financial investment. Why are we doing this? Well, when you really think about it, there isn't really a good reason for putting a station underground in a city like Las Vegas. Now, in a city like New York that is incredibly densely packed, maybe a London or Hong Kong or Tokyo, yes, everyone is densely packed in. You don't have the room to put a station above ground, but somewhere like Las Vegas, there's not really an excuse, especially since we are well away from the main strip. It is essentially not cost effective. Why have they come to the conclusion? Well, basically, they've had a good chat with their quantity surveyor, and the quantity surveyor said, look, we are spending close to 55% of the budget on this project building underground stations, because we have to build 3 underground stations. We have relatively few miles of tunnel. It's around 1.62 miles of tunnel on this project, yet we are building 3 underground stations. It is going to be expensive because there's no other way of doing it other than using secant piles, maybe using sheet piling, but certainly in this instance the ground conditions don't favour that approach, so they're going to have to use expensive methods of construction, and it's going to add up. Now, if you remember my previous episode, I talked about the Obashi group and how they have come up with this ultra rapid underpass system, also known as Europe as we like to call it. That is a major game changer. If you see here, here's the proof rock machine. The proof rock machine is going to be launched at an angle without a launch pit, or with a relatively shallow launch pit. And it's going to be based on this kind of launch frame, which will guarantee the exact entry angle that is required for the particular project to create a ramp that takes you down to the tunnel and also takes you out of the tunnel. So essentially what you're doing is you're compiling the entire construction process into that one machine. You don't have to worry about other elements of the construction project being completed simultaneously. Therefore, you're saving yourself a massive amount of money. Adoption of ramps in Las Vegas at Las Vegas Convention Center Stations 1 and 3. There will be no underground stations. At station number 1 and station number 3, they will be above ground. Station number 2 will still be underground, as it makes sense just to have a straight line rather than having 2 ramps. And it also allows people to pass through if they're going directly from station 1 to 3 or 3 to 1. But this is a massively positive development because it shows the Boring Company is willing to change. They're willing to look at things again. They're willing to come to the right conclusions over time, looking at the dollars, looking at the bottom line and saying, look, this is expensive. We don't need to do this. There is no huge benefit from having an underground station. It doesn't give you anything extra that you don't get from an above ground station. And it's very kind of old school thinking to think that if you have underground tunnels, you then therefore have to have underground stations. Not when you're using vehicles that are based on rubber tires, essentially. You can go up gradients of 1 in 2, easily 1 in 2, whereas your typical sort of tram or light rail vehicle is going to struggle on gradients of 1 in 6, possibly 1 in 5 a push, but certainly 1 in 6 gradients. Your typical tram light rail is going to really struggle. Potentially will need a bit of momentum to get going up that gradient. But your typical Tesla vehicle can very easily cope with a 1 in 2 gradient, so it's not a big deal. Here is the old cost build-up for the Las Vegas Convention Center People Mover. It has changed. It's around $50 million at the moment. But as you can see here, we have our breakdown of the station construction. Station excavation, $6.2 million. Station concrete and masonry, $7.2 million. Station metals, so that'll be your ring beam, your props, any other kind of supportive works for that excavation, $3.7 million. Station finishes, $1.09 million. Station furniture, equipment and vertical transportation, so they'd be your lifts and your escalators, $3.3 million. All that equals to $24.3 million, which is, let me just work that out, it is over 7 million per station. Well over 7 million. In fact, it's closer to 8 actually, isn't it? 816, yes. So it's very close to $8 million per station. That's an excessive amount of money. 55% of the total budget is being spent on underground stations. What a waste of money. We don't need to do it like that. We can come up with better ideas. Yeah, we don't need to copy the rail industry. We can do our own thing. Ramps are the key. Absolutely critical. And those ramps can have a really steep gradient if necessary. It can range. Really can have it up to what you want. But as you can see here, the areas that are in green, these are going to be using ramps. Essentially one inbound ramp and one outbound ramp, and again inbound, outbound ramp. Station number 2 will still have an underground station. That is necessary because we need vehicles passing through. I mean, they could have a ramp system potentially added at a later date, but at this present time it just makes sense to keep the underground station and spend the $8.1 million to construct that. Here's the original design for Station 3. As you can see, it's a big unit, 250 foot by 100 foot. You have 2 escalators here. I believe you have, lifts. You have 2 lifts, and I think you have 4 escalators. It's either 4 or 2 escalators. So there's a lot of work getting people in and getting people out of that station. A lot of excavation work for a pit that deep. Remember, it's going to be a good 30 to 38 foot deep around that, plus a bit more probably. That is a lot of work. Here is the new design, the initial design. Just a quick apology, this image is pretty much garbage. I need to find a better one, and I will do in the near future, but it gives you a brief overview how it's going to look. I think potentially this could change again. But you have your inbound ramp. You guys drive on the right, don't you? So inbound ramp here and outbound ramp here. You have your docking areas here. So vehicles are going to pull in. They're going to go around until they find a space and then pull in. People can get out, then people can get in. You have lots of space potentially here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, at least 10 vehicles. Potentially, again, that could be extended across here. There's a lot of potential there, a lot of potential. And potentially you could have loading bays on the opposite side as well. So there are means to expanding this, but it's a much better system. We're doing away with unnecessary elements like escalators and lifts. We're doing away with this mezzanine level that we're going to have. All the ancillary works. It's just a far more cost-effective way of doing it. You keep all the benefits, you lose all the disadvantages. Now, is this the right path? Absolutely the right path. And if you have been watching this channel for a long time, I have been singing the praises of ramps and talking about the need for not having stations for a good 18 months now. I don't think having lots of these underground stations, especially so close together, I think that's insane. Absolutely insane to have so many stations so close together when you could just have essentially a ramp to the surface, and then vehicles can take you to your location, and then you can disembark at the location within 40, 50 meters of your front door or your office or wherever you need to go. Cost is an absolutely huge, major barrier to many large infrastructure schemes. So many infrastructure schemes are stuck on the drawing board because the costs are so excessive. If the Boeing company can continue to find ways to cut costs by focusing on what works rather than what has been done in the past, then they will continue to win contracts. And the most important thing is, if they are having to raise private finance for these jobs, it's going to be a lot easier when they need to raise 250 million rather than having to raise 380 million. So they're always going to be saving money by trying to keep everything above ground other than the tunnel itself. The only important element that needs to be underground is the tunnels. Everything else can be taken to the surface. There doesn't need to be stations. The vehicle can simply take you to the surface and drop you off where you need to be, rather than having you drop you off at a station, and then you've got the last mile problem where you have to find your way the last 1 to 2 miles home. That's not effective. It's never ever worked. It's made people's lives difficult. Number 3, they are unnecessary when pods and AVs can stop on side roads and parking lots, as I've just said. And ramps can get you to the surface relatively quickly. You have 70, 80 meters of ramp that can get you quite easily from 40 foot below ground up to the surface relatively quickly. You can be traveling along that ramp at a good speed, maybe in excess of 60 miles per hour. So when you get to the surface, there's no big delay. There's no requirement for you to disembark the vehicle, walk to the elevator, which takes time, wait for the elevator, get in the elevator, go up the elevator, walk to the surface. There's none of those delays in the process. We're trying to minimize the number of times you need to change vehicle or disembark a vehicle or get into an alternative piece of transport. We should be utilising existing road network via ramps when necessary. We're very, very lucky in the USA and in America, in Europe, the UK. We have an extremely big road network, extremely good road network, well maintained. We should utilise that road network. It's not going to go away over the next 30 or 40 years. We need the tunnels to get us near to our destination, but the ramp can take us to the surface, and then the final 800 metres of your journey, that can be done by the existing road network. If that means going through a few traffic lights, so be it, but it's still going to be relatively quick and obviously quite a bit more affordable, because you don't need to have tunnels linking every single street, every single junction, every single dual carriageway. So we should use the existing road network, certainly in the medium term, until we have a critical mass of tunnels to go everywhere or nearly everywhere. Obviously as well, one of the main sort of things that grinds my gears is building infrastructure is often a horrendous bureaucratic mess and needs reform. They don't care. The people that are bidding for these contracts and trying to build these underground rail schemes like Crossrail, extending the tube in London, extending the subway in New York, these people, and extending the underground in LA as well, these people don't care if the cost is 10% more than when they did the tunnel 2 years ago. They don't care. They get a percentage of that cost. So it's in their interest if the cost is slowly, steadily increasing well beyond inflation every quarter, every year, as they make more money. They don't really care about trying to find ways to save money because that means they're going to lose money. So it's not in their interest to do that. They're not going to take a pay cut to keep you happy. They just want to keep doing things the way they've always done them. The Boeing company can totally revolutionize mass transit by taking away that layer of wastage. They are the operator of the system. They build the system. They maintain the system. And they manufacture the vehicles that are used in the system. So all those 4 things they do, it's in their interest to drive down the costs, to look after the pennies, and the pounds will look after themselves. And that is why the Boeing company is always, always, always going to undercut the traditional rail and bus and metro operators. Another critical thing as well, what about sunlight? Sunlight is so very, very important to your health, to how you visualize something. So having these stations above ground, having lots of greenery around there, having a really open plan design, protection from the sun, but you can obviously see beautiful sunlight around you. That certainly helps attract more people to utilize a system. Conclusion. We kept constantly seeing this similar kind of mindset. So the mindset at Tesla and SpaceX is very, very similar because Elon Musk drills it into his engineers in terms of what they need to do and how they need to achieve things. And the mindset is no design is ever fixed. If you think that you can do something a bit better, do it. Don't think about having to rip things up and start again. Just do it. Find the straightest line. Find the best, most cost-effective means of doing something. Find the simplest, most practical means of building this item. And that exact same mindset applies to the Boeing company. Designs will regularly evolve. And this is not going to be the end or evolution of this design for the Boeing company. The design of the tunnels is going to change. The design of the stations is going to change. The design of the road deck is going to change. The design of the vehicles is going to change. The design of the TBM is going to change. Everything will evolve all the time up until, 20, 30 years. And then maybe we've come to that, near perfection design. But it will always change because there's that constant emphasis on evolving the design to make things work far better. Also as well, think about bus networks. Most modern bus networks operate with relatively few big stations. You'll have a big station in the middle of a city and then all the other bus stops all around, all the other roads that are serving that major city. You don't need some kind of huge infrastructure thing for the Boeing company. All you need is a level 4 autonomous vehicle and it'll take you to any street, any address with a road connection in the entire city, in the suburbs, in the neighbouring cities or towns or villages or wherever. We don't need to have some kind of big station, big signpost, Boeing Company vehicles stop here. We don't need that because we have this thing called a smartphone, and that can tell the vehicle within an accuracy of about 6 or 7 inches where we are and when we need to be picked up and where exactly that pickup point will be on Google Maps or Apple Maps or wherever it needs to be. So we don't need any kind of station infrastructure whatsoever. We just need a road, and there's plenty of roads around that we can use for free. We must continue to push the cost of building Boeing Company projects down, because we need to undercut metro rail alternatives by over 60%, possibly nearer 70%. The reason is we need to make our product so desirable, so cheap, so efficient that when people put our project and other metro rail projects side by side on a piece of paper and they analyse them, they look at them and they say, wow, this is the easiest decision I have ever made in my life. We're going to choose the Boeing Company project because they can do it for $200 million, whereas this metro rail project is going to cost almost $600 million. Let's go for the Boeing Company project because this is clearly the most cost-effective solution. It'll also move more people, and it'll do so in a more cost-effective manner, require less maintenance, and also it will operate 22 hours of the day, not just 16 hours of the day. And obviously the focus again is going back to that constant theme from the beginning of this personalized mass transit. You as a person are not going to want to walk to a station when you can be picked up at your own home or very closely nearby, because it's more convenient for you. It works better for you. So if I could walk out of this house and be picked up, 50 meters in that direction, that's great. If it can then drop me off within 100 meters of where I work, that's phenomenal, because that is going to save me at least 10 minutes based on what I'm currently experiencing with the train system and having to wait for a train to arrive at a specific time. And on top of that, this system will be faster. It will have better acceleration and it'll have better top speed. So you're winning in all elements. If you live in a country where it's raining all the time, the last thing you want to be doing is walking between a station and your place of work, because it makes you want to use the car, because you don't like the idea of being in the cold, even if it is only for 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so that is the conclusion. We are moving to ramps. Underground stations are going to be minimised. The Boeing Company has come to the right conclusion. I hope you all agree. If you agree, tell me in the comments below why you think it's a good idea. If you don't, also tell me in the comments below. Please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I really do appreciate all your support. We're getting phenomenal numbers in terms of people watching older videos and new videos as well. So this channel is absolutely booming, despite me being very, very busy recently and unable to do as many videos as I would like to. Join us on Discord, Twitter and Instagram. Links are in the section below. I appreciate some feedback in the comments below, as I've just said. Patrons, thank you to all my patrons: Ashley, Mike, David, Christopher, Jim and Charlie. And that is that, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching today. I really hope you have a great day, and remember, don't be boring, and hopefully